From famous movie star to broke in one day, Al Pacino lost everything when the moneyman he trusted stole $50 million in a huge scam. At age 84, he spends $400,000 a year on landscaping for empty homes and supports a 29-year-old girlfriend who dates other men and plays embarrassing parts just to stay alive. The actor who played the Godfather even passed out during the show and doctors fought to bring him back to life. This compelling tale is the shocking true story of how a famous actor lost his job. Alfredo James Pacino was born on April 25, 1940, in East Harlem, New York City. Both of his parents, Rose and Salvatore Pacino, were from Sicily. His dad moved to the United States from San Frillo, Sicily, and his mom's family came from Corleone. That name would become popular in The Godfather, but for Pacino, it was just part of his family tree. His parents split up when he was only 2 years old. Pacino and his mother had to start over in the South Bronx after his father went to California to work as a salesman. Things were tough. His mom moved them in with her parents, and he grew up with Kate and James Girardi, his grandparents. His grandma was in charge. She was a strong woman who kept the family together. Growing up in the Bronx was hard. Pacino got into fights every day. He skipped school and even stole food when money was tight. At first, he wanted to be a baseball player, but movies became his escape. By the time he was a teenager, all he wanted to do was act. His mother took him to the theater a lot. He was never good at school. He went to Herman Ritter Junior High and then the High School of Performing Arts, but school didn't seem like a way to help him get ahead. English was the only subject he did well in. He quit school when he was 17. His mother was very sad. She wanted him to have a steady job, something that would make his life stable. When he said no, their fights got worse. He eventually moved out and had to take care of himself. The next few years were the hardest of his life. He did any job he could find. Cleaner, bus boy, mail clerk. He slept on the streets or on friends' beds some nights because he had nowhere else to go. He also joined the wrong group of people. He began smoking and drinking when he was 9 years old. He was using pot by age 13. A lot of his best friends became addicted to drugs, and 3 of them died from heroin abuse. Pacino knew what would happen if he didn't pay attention. He was set on not ending up the same way. He tried out for the acting school several times but was turned down each time. He didn't give up, so he went to HB Studio and met Charlie Hilton. Hilton became his mentor and taught him method acting, which took a lot of emotional commitment. Pacino worked on his skill day and night, putting everything he had into it. But he still had trouble with money. He would sometimes sleep on the stage of the theater where he was practicing. Then terrible things happened in 1962. His mother did too much drugs and died at age 43. It wasn't long after that his grandpa also died. The losses were terrible. Pacino got depressed and had a challenging time staying afloat. He was homeless at times and had to borrow money just to eat, but he wouldn't give up on his dream. At age 23, he was finally accepted into the acting studio. He studied with Lee Strasberg, who is known as one of the most important acting teachers of all time. Strasberg taught Pacino how to trust himself and bring real emotion to every part. Pacino had found his place, but success was still a long way off. In 1968, things got better for him. People in the movie and theater industries were interested in him after he got a part in the off-Broadway play The Indian Wants the Bronx. The show won him an Obie Award and opened doors that didn't seem possible before. After years of hard work, people were finally paying attention to him. Pacino once said, "I knew I was this wandering kid, but when the chance came up, all I had to do was be there." Every hard time, every turn down, and every night spent on the streets had led him to this point. Al Pacino's big break in Hollywood began with a small but important part in Me Natalie in 1969 in the Fred co-directed movie. Patty Duke played a young woman in Greenwich Village who is trying to make her way through life. Pacino only had a small part in the movie, but it was his first real movie role. For that reason, no one knew who he was. He lived in Greenwich Village and studied acting with Charlie Hilton at the Herbert Berghof studio. His real love was theater, and earlier that year he won a Tony Award for his role in Does the Tiger Wear a Necktie? That show how dedicated he was to playing, but Hollywood was a different place. Me Natalie didn't do very well at the box office, but it did make $1.9 million in the US and Canada. Even more important, it was Pacino's first time being in front of a camera. It was only a small step, but it was important. In 1971, 2 years later, he got his first lead part in The Panic in Needle Park. There was a lot more to do here. The movie, which was directed by Jerry Schatzberg, showed heroin abuse in New York City in a dark and honest way. Pacino played Bobby, a small-time con artist whose life and that of his girlfriend Helen, played by Kitty Wynn, get out of hand. Joan Diane and John Gregory Dunn wrote the story, which was based on a book by James Mills. It didn't hide anything. It was brutally honest about how bad drug abuse really is. Bobby was played by Pacino with a raw passion that made him both charismatic and deeply troubled. Critics praised his role, hailing it as one of the most realistic depictions of addiction ever seen on film. The movie didn't do well at the box office, but it became a cult favorite. Karen Wynn won Best Actress at Cannes, but Pacino's show was the real winner. A director saw it and would change his life forever. Joseph Ford Coppola, The Godfather 1972 was being filmed at the time. Paramount was looking for a famous star to play Michael Corleone. They thought about Robert Redford and Jack Nicholson, but Coppola saw something in Pacino that no one else did. The company pushed for James Caan because they thought Pacino was too short and not well known enough. Coppola wouldn't give up. He thought Pacino had the quiet intensity Michael needed to change from a reluctant outsider to a cruel mob boss. In the first week of shooting, Pacino almost didn't get the part. CEOs weren't pleased, they thought he was too passive in his work. His owner had to fight to keep him. The next scene was the restaurant murder where Michael killed Sollozzo and McCluskey. It was the big moment. When Pacino played that part with such control, everything changed. The studio finally saw what Coppola had seen from the beginning. When The Godfather came out on March 15, 1972, it was an instant hit. It made over $250 million around the world on a budget of $6 million. Pacino's performance will live on forever. Along with James Caan and Robert Duvall, he was up for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Character. Even though he didn't win, just being nominated showed that he was a Hollywood star in every sense of the word. He came back for The Godfather Part 2 1974, which was 2 years later. This movie had two stories. Robert De Niro plays Michael Corleone's rise to power in the present and the early life of his father Vito Corleone. No longer was Michael an outsider, he was now the head of the family. Pacino's acting showed how power had changed him. He was colder, meaner, and more alone. Some reviewers said it was one of the best playing jobs ever. The movie won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Art Carney beat Pacino to win the award for Best Performance. Still, he won the BAFTA for Best Acting, which indicated that people all over the world knew how talented he was. Pacino also acted in Serpico 1973, which came out between the Godfather movies. It was based on the true story of NYPD officer Frank Serpico, who revealed corruption in the force. It was directed by Sidney Lumet. Pacino was able to show a different side of his play in the part. He wasn't acting like a gangster or a bad guy. He played a man who was up against a crooked system. His performance blew everyone away. Because he was so into it, the anger and rage he showed on screen felt real. Himself in the part, he was again nominated for an Oscar for Best Performer. Then came Dog Day Afternoon 1975, which was also directed by Sidney Lumet. In this movie, Pacino played Sonny Wartzik, a man who robs a bank to pay for his partner's surgery to change their gender. The story was based on real events, and Pacino played the part with a lot of energy and feeling. When he walked out of the bank and started yelling "Attica" at the cops, referring to the 1971 Attica prison riots, it was one of the most famous scenes in the movie. That scene was made up on the spot. The movie did well at the box office and with critics, and Pacino was nominated for another Oscar. In the early 1970s, Al Pacino was the biggest star in Hollywood. He became one of the most recognized actors in the business with roles in The Godfather, Serpico, and Dog Day Afternoon. But by the late 1970s, things began to go wrong. His first big mistake was in 1977 with Bobby Deerfield. The romantic thriller was directed by Sidney Pollack and was meant to show a different side of Pacino. Instead, it turned out to be one of his worst mistakes. People thought it was slow and boring. A few people even booed at showings. It was just as harsh from critics. One review said it was a DRE movie that should have gone straight to video, which was especially harsh since home video wasn't even around yet. In 1980, he was still having trouble with driving. The movie, which was directed by William Friedkin, was about an undercover cop in New York's underground gay leather scene who was looking for a serial killer. From the very beginning, it got many negative reviews. Activists protested the film's production by blowing air horns, breaking mirrors, and making so much noise that much of the speech had to be re-recorded. When the movie came out in theaters, the debate only got worse. Many people thought it was cruel. People were upset that the story didn't have a clear ending. Some people said it was confusing and lacked direction. Years later, in his memoir 2024, Sonny Boy Pacino said he felt bad about making the movie and wouldn't support it. His job was in danger. But in 1983, he had one of the most famous comebacks in movie history. Scarface was aggressive, went too far, and did something he had never done before. It was a giant risk to play Tony Montana. Sidney Lumet was supposed to direct, but he quit because of differences in style. Oliver Stone wrote the script while he was addicted to cocaine, which added to the raw energy of the movie. When it came out, critics weren't thrilled. But the crowd had a different reaction. Many thought it was too violent and over the top. People who had something to do with Tony Montana's rise and fall. The movie made $66 million around the world, but it only cost $25 million to make. After a while, it became a national thing. People loved the line, "Say hello to my little friend." The movie was a hit with hip-hop artists, and its impact went far beyond Hollywood. Pacino had once again shown why he was one of the best. When things looked like they were going well again, there was another disaster. Revolution, 1985, was a $288 million big movie about the American Revolution. It only made $358,574 at the box office. People didn't like it. Many people made fun of Pacino's accent. The movie got so bad reviews that he left Hollywood for 4 years. He came back with Sea of Love in 1989, which was a smash hit that showed how talented he was, but it wasn't until 1992 that he really made a name for himself again. Everything changed when Scent of a Woman came out. It was directed by Martin Brest and was about a blind and angry former Army officer named Frank Slade who forms a bond with a young student. The part was complicated. Slade was frustrated and unpredictable, but also charming in his own way. The show led up to a powerful speech in court that stunned the crowd. Pacino had been nominated 8 times for an Oscar but never won. That was finally awarded. He won the Oscar for Best Acting this time. The film won several Golden Globes and made $134.1 million around the world on a $31 million budget. After decades of success, he was one of the most admired stars in the world. But behind the fame, he was on the way to a financial disaster that would wipe him out. In his 70s, he ran a Ponzi scheme and lost $50 million. He also spent millions on things he used and had to do things he never thought he'd have to do just to stay alive. The person Pacino trusted with his money betrayed him the most. Ken Starr was a business advisor who worked with some of Hollywood's biggest stars. Pacino thought that his money was safe. Starr had full power over his money. He even gave him permission to sign checks for him. Starr told himself that everything was okay for years. In fact, he was running a Ponzi scheme by moving money from one account to another and using celebrity funds to help him, so Pacino's money vanished when the truth surfaced in 2010. Starr was found guilty that same year and given a 7.5 year jail sentence, but that didn't bring Pacino's money back. After the fact, the Star wrote about the moment he understood what had happened. He had $50 million one day. No, Pacino's spending was so high that even his millions couldn't keep up with the Ponzi scheme. He was paying $400,000 a year for landscaping on a house he didn't even live in. That's about $900,000 today, adjusted for inflation. He also found that he was paying for 16 cars when he only owned 2, and he had 23 active cell phone lines. He had no idea why these charges kept coming up. He had never paid attention to his money. He worked on his acting and let other people handle the money. He thought the money he was making would cover everything. Even his huge paychecks of $10 million per movie were being eaten away by taxes, lawyer fees, and agent payments. Besides that, he rented houses instead of buying them. He moved from fancy home to fancy home and spent millions on fancy trips. He spent a lot of money on just one trip to Europe. He rented out an entire floor at London's Dorchester Hotel and flew guests on a private Gulfstream jet. Everything seemed fine until it wasn't. His money was gone, and he had to move quickly. Fans were shocked when they saw him in that part. In 2011, he was in the comedy Jack and Jill with Adam Sandler. The movie made $149 million around the world, but reviewers were very harsh on it. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a mark of 3%. 2 Razzie Awards were given to Pacino. Received 2 Razzie Awards for his portrayal of an exaggerated version of himself. Ording actor and worst screen pair. It made people wonder why he played the part. It was a straightforward answer. He had no money. He needed cash quickly, and Jack and Jill gave it to him. The movie is said to have paid him $5 million. It saved my life. It didn't make him rich again, but it kept him alive. Even though it got bad reviews, the movie opened up more doors for him. Brands asked him to be in ads, and studios gave him new parts. He slowly started getting his earnings back on track. He admitted that his time with Jack and Jill wasn't the best he had ever experienced. But he didn't feel bad. Al Pacino, who has never married, is the father of 4 children, 4 kids from 3 different relationships. He even said Adam Sandler enjoyably and to work with. Julie Marie, his oldest child, was born on October 16, 1989. The acting teacher who is her mother, Jan Tarrant, dated Pacino for a short time before they broke up. After more than a decade, Pacino became a dad again when his twins, Anton and Olivia Rose, were born in 2001. Their mother, actress Beverly D'Angelo, was with Pacino for 6 years, from 1997 to 2003. Then, in 2023, something strange took place. Pacino had his 4th child when he was 83 years old. On June 15, 2023, his girlfriend, film director Noor Al-Fallah, gave birth to their son Valentine. 4 years have passed since Al-Fallah was born. When they started dating in April 2022, it became a big deal right away. Pacino had been tied to a number of famous women over the years, including Diane Keaton, who played the lead role in The Godfather. They were together on and off for years before breaking up after The Godfather Part 3. She once told Pacino she was deeply in love with him and said he was the funniest man alive. In the end, Pacino was with Argentine actress Lucila Pack for 10 years. Before that, he was with Tuesday Weld, Marta Keller, and other women. Even with all of these relationships, Pacino never thought marriage would work for him. He once said that it just didn't feel right. But being a father was different. He was proud to be a dad, even though it wasn't always easy juggling work and befather a dad. In his autobiography, Sonny Boy, he admitted that he hadn't always given his twins the attention they needed as they were growing up. There have been times in Al Pacino's life that feel like scenes from one of his movies. Some scared him, and some changed him forever. Each of them reveals a side art of his life that most people don't see. Someone did something that could have turned out very differently back in the 1970s, when The Godfather made him famous. He was too drunk to drive home one night after drinking for hours with Richard Hackman, who is the brother of Gene Hackman Pacino. A friend offered to drive him home despite being intoxicated. He proceeded without hesitation. Nk. At first, nothing seemed odd, but then he noticed they weren't going in the right way. He asked her where they were going, and she said, "I'm kidnapping you." Even though he was drunk, his instincts took over, and he told her he was leaving, but she kept driving. To get away, you had to jump. He was ready. She may have seen the fear in his eyes and known he wasn't going to give up quickly. No, regardless of her motivation, she abruptly surrendered. Instead of taking him somewhere unknown, she drove him home. Years later, in his autobiography Sonny Boy, Pacino said that growing up in the South Bronx had made him ready for things like this. He learned early on how to stay alive. What he did that night saved him. After almost 50 years, in 2020, he had to deal with something even worse. COVID-19 spread around the world, and Pacino was one of many who got sick. He was really hurt by the bug. He experienced a fever and dehydration, followed by a period of inactivity. Passed out. His heart stopped beating. He wasn't there for a few scary minutes. Paramedics showed up in full safety gear. 6 of them and 2 doctors worked to save his life. He finally woke up to see people all around him wearing medical gear. He later said they looked like they were from a science fiction movie, but what he had just been through felt more real. People who make it through these kinds of close calls often talk about seeing a bright light or feeling a presence. Pacino didn't feel any of those things. He said it felt like a void. That's right, you're here and not here. You don't even have your memories. You have nothing. The event changed him and made him think about everything again. Death, life, and what might come after. He promised himself he would take better care of himself and spend more time with his son Roman after he got better, but he knows that moment will always be with him. Pacino was already fighting something that wouldn't let him rest a long time before either of these near-death events. He had struggled with sleep for the majority of his life. He had trouble sleeping for decades because his mind wouldn't stop racing. He couldn't fall asleep some nights because his mind wouldn't leave him alone, and other nights he worn out too tired to move. But no matter how tired he was, it was always hard for him to fall asleep. By the time he was a big star, not getting enough sleep was starting to affect his daily life. He would often stay up until sunrise, which left worn outraged during the day. Over time, the effects got worse. Changes in mood and memory, times when being tired made reality less clear. He even said that when he was at his worst, he had dreams. In 2002, he played a cop who wasn't getting enough sleep in Christopher Nolan's psychological thriller Insomnia. He wasn't just playing a part, he knew what it was like to lie awake all night and feel his mind drifting off. Money problems made things even worse. At one point, a dishonest accountant cost him millions of dollars. The stress of the money added to his trouble sleeping. He always had to fight, even when he found ways to deal with things. He learned to cope with his insomnia, but it was still one of his greatest challenges. It was a silent battle that no one could see. Al Pacino has been one of Hollywood's most admired actors for decades. But with fame comes attention, and some of his work and personal relationships have caused trouble. In 1980, he was in the movie Cruising, which quickly became a target for protests. It was one of the most talked about parts of his career. The movie, which was directed by William Friedkin, showed Pacino as a cop who went undercover in a New York City gay club to catch a serial killer. It looked like it would make a fantastic crime story on paper. In fact, it caused an uproar. Activists for LGBTQ+ rights were afraid that it would spread hurtful stereotypes, and they spoke out before it came out. Almost every day, protesters showed up at shooting locations to make it clear they weren't going to let this movie paint a bad picture of their community. They chanted, waved signs, and made loud noises during takes to make their point. When Cruising came out in theaters, there was just as much anger. Some people said it was cruel. Different groups of people had different reactions, and many thought it made the LGBTQ+ community look bad instead of showing who they are. Later, even Pacino said he felt awful about making the movie. In his autobiography, Sonny Boy, he wrote that after seeing how the movie turned out, he gave his whole paycheck to charity without giving his name. As an actor, he wanted to push himself, but instead he became the center of a scandal that never quite went away. A few years later, Pacino's personal life was the subject of another heated debate. People were surprised.